Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our new live event. My name is Victoria, and I work for Factorial HR, which is an all in one HR software company offering digital solutions to HR professionals all around the world. Today, we have with us Sean Miller. Hello, and welcome.
Hi, Victoria.
At Factorial, we are very excited to have you with us today. And because we want to simplify the HR processes for all HR professionals around the world, we invited you to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where you can follow our live events like this one that happen every 2 weeks and which we created for the purpose to cover trending HR topics and share them with you. Today, Sean Miller will talk for learning development programs and how much they're important for the workplace. He is the founder and lead consultant at brightN. He is committed to lifelong learning and is currently studying transactional analysis with the Connexus Institute in Brighton, England. Sean is a chartered member of the CIPD and holds a master's degree in human resources and a PCC qualification with the International Coaching Federation. During this next hour, Sean will discuss today's topic, how L&D programs can improve performance in the workplace. He'll be covering these two main key points. Is your culture supporting or limiting learning and development in your organization as the first topic? And the second one is, how do we as HR professionals meet current 21st century challenges and drive better performance for our organizations, creating awesome work environments for our colleagues whilst also prospering professionally and personally? Before we start, please tell us in the chat where you're tuning in from, and please share your questions in the chat during Sean's presentation. Hello, Sean, and welcome again. We are pleased to have you with us today, and you can take over from here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Victoria. It's lovely to be with you all and to be with the community today. So before we get into to today's topic, I guess I'm just going to give you a little brief introduction to myself. So I've been working in learning and organizational development for 25 years now, and I've been privileged to work in many sectors, including retail, financial services, recruitment, media, and about a year ago, I set up my own business, brightN. And I guess the reason I set the business up was really to work aligned to my personal philosophy, because I believe that every individual and every organization has a light, has a spark inside them. And what I do is help them shine. So I'm not here to fix people or fix organizations. My role is to really help them to be the best they can be, to help them shine. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes. And really what I'm going to share with you is my perspective on the two issues that I'll talk about, namely how culture can limit or enhance learning and development in the workplace, and how we as professionals can have the maximum impact when we're talking to our stakeholders. Now, I don't profess to be the guru on all things learning and development. This is my opinion, this is my view, and it's based on both my education and my experience that I've had with working with lots of organizations across the world. So I'm going to start off by talking about learning and development in the workplace. And if we could go to the second slide, Victoria, that would be really, really great. So many organizations and many learning and development functions, I think one of the things that we really try to do is deliver return on investment to our stakeholders. That's our number one priority. And if I think about how learning and development has changed over the last 25 years, I've seen a lot of introduction of really fabulous tools. So I can remember way back in the late 90s, like computer-based training was all the rave. That quickly turned into e-learning. I've seen social learning. I've seen gamification. I've seen spaced repetition learning, and loads of really fabulous tools. And I don't want to knock any of those tools. I think they're all really valuable, and they are really innovative ways of helping people learn and develop. However, I do think one thing trumps tools within an organization, and that is culture. Now, there are lots and lots of different ways of viewing culture. In the introduction, Victoria said that I'm studying transactional analysis. So I'm going to share with you a model of culture that comes from the world of transactional analysis. And what I'll do is, in a moment, I will talk about how learning and development fits in to this model. So this model comes from Eric Berne. Eric Berne is the grandfather of transactional analysis. And just for context, transactional analysis mainly has three applications. It's used psychotherapeutically, so it's used within a counseling context. It's used within an educational context, and it's also used in an organizational context, and that is the area that I specialize in. So Eric Berne looked at the organization and he split it into three parts. The three parts that you can see on the screen. So he split culture into etiquette, techniques, and character. Let me explain those one by one. So etiquette. This is the part of an organizational culture that describes how it wants to be seen, how it should be. So it includes your employee value proposition. It includes your values. It also would include examples of leadership that we want to aspire to in the organization. It also is the external face of your culture. So if you're in the world of recruitment, many candidates will be drawn to your organization by the strength of your etiquette, your employee value proposition. They will have heard things about the organization, they will have a view on the organization, and that's what will draw them to the organization. That is the etiquette. Technics really refers to all of the infrastructure of an organization. So it would include your physical environment. Do you have one office? Do you have many offices? Is it in a city? Is it outside a city? Is it a virtual environment? Is it a hybrid environment? Technics would also refer to the IT infrastructure that you have. It also includes all policies and processes. It also includes learning and development tools, and I'll come back to that in a moment. The final part of Berne's cultural model is the part that is often overlooked, and that is called character. Character is people's experience of the organization. It is the climate in which they work in. I'm not talking about the climate from an environmental perspective. I'm talking about how it feels to work within the team that you are part of. Now, often this is where we have a problem. If there is misalignment between the etiquette and the character, in other words, if what was sold to me in talent acquisition is not my experience, then engagement will fall. Now, what Eric Berne argues is that if culture is to flow, and what Eric Berne means by flow is if the culture is positive, if the culture is leading to positive increases in key performance indicators, then the connection between the etiquette, the techniques, and the character needs to flow. It needs to talk to each other. If the etiquette, character, and techniques do not talk to each other, that's when we start to see engagement go down. So when we think about learning and development, a lot of solutions sit within the techniques of an organization. So if we consider Berne's cultural model, that's where learning and development solutions sit. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. What we need to ensure is that the etiquette and the character is also aligned. Now, many organizations will make promises to their employees about learning and development. So I've often seen in a value proposition from an organization, you come to us, we'll develop you. This is the place where you can really have a great career. And all of that is absolutely fine. So those messages sit within the etiquette. We can also have lots of solutions to back that up in terms of our techniques. The challenge can be if the character is not aligned. Put very simply, we might have a great proposition about learning. We might have really innovative tools. But if people's experience is such that they cannot use, or they don't see learning and development solutions used, then the character is misaligned. So let me go a little bit deeper into that by asking, third person some questions. Is learning and organizational development prioritized in your organization? Or is it the first thing that goes when an operational issue presents itself? Do leaders participate in learning and development? Or do they identify that learning and development needs to sit within a certain part of an organizational hierarchy? Do people see people around themselves learning? Do they see their managers learning? If the answer to that is no, then the challenge that we have is the character is not resonating. And therefore we have a dysfunction in the culture when it comes to learning and development. Now, there are very, very simple things to do which can ensure that the character really resonates. Firstly, it's participation. It's making sure that everyone, including leaders, including the C-suite, take part in learning and development. A very simple message from really senior stakeholders about, hey, this is what I'm learning this month, or this is the book I'm reading, pays real dividends when it comes to character. We can actually start to see that learning and development is embraced as an experience. The other thing to question in your organization from a character perspective is, are we investing in learning and development? Now, a popular metric for looking at learning and development investment is your percentage of payroll that you invest in learning and development. Something that is below 1% is considered poor. It's considered a poor investment in learning and development. Anything over 2% is considered to be really innovative and really forward thinking when it comes to learning and development. Now, I'm keeping my eye on the time. I can see that it's about 1:15. And I want to make a segue now from an organizational perspective on learning and development. And I'd really like to actually bring in what this means in terms of individual impact. So, Victoria, would you mind just moving to the next slide, please? So, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we as professionals can really have impact and meet the challenges of working within the 21st century. So again, this is a personal perspective. For me, being effective is all about creating impact. For me, that's what effectiveness is. It's creating impact. And at brightN, we think of impact from 4 perspectives: content, audience or your stakeholders, body, and voice. And I will bring this to life in a moment. And collectively, your content, your stakeholders, your body and voice, if we can get those working for ourselves, we create impact. So in terms of impact, the first thing to consider is, what impact am I trying to make? Am I trying to educate people? Am I trying to engage people? Am I trying to excite people? Am I having to deliver a really tough message to people? What is the impact I'm trying to make? Because if we don't know that ourselves, if we haven't considered it, the probability that we can deliver that impact to others is limited. So let me talk about content. There are a lot of HR professionals on this call, and it goes without saying that part of effectiveness and creating impact is really being knowledgeable about your area of expertise. So if you're in talent acquisition, it's understanding different recruitment and selection processes. And if you're in learning and development, it's understanding the ecosphere of learning and development. And I could go on and on and on. There's also a part of content, which is really knowing how your piece of the HR puzzle really connects with the broader HR or talent function. And I'm using those words interchangeably because some organizations still use the word HR and some organizations use the word talent. That's another debate that I'm not going to get into today. So part of creating impact is being knowledgeable about your area of expertise. The second piece of impact is really about knowing your stakeholders or your audience. Who am I positioning my message to? So that could be, in terms of, if we're thinking about change, how openness are people to change? Is this a new message? Is this a continuation? What are people's likely reactions going to be to the impact you're going to make? The other two areas are body and voice. Now, if I was purist, I always separate them out for explanation, but they are really part of the same system. Your voice is part of your body. It's actually not separated. I separate it out for purpose of explanation. And this is what brightN, my company, really specializes in, is really helping people really consider how they use their body and their voice to create impact. Now, I also draw upon my own personal path. So in a previous life, I was a trained actor. I was an actor. And in addition to performance skills, one of the things about acting that really resonates with me is that you learn the skill of connecting, whether you're connecting to a character or whether you're connecting to an audience. So ensuring that we present ourselves in the most impactful way is really, really significant. So I'm not going to go into how we talk about how we increase skills in the body and the voice, in this call at depth, because we'd be here like for hours and hours and hours. But it's about understanding things like tonality in terms of the voice, breathing, vocal animation. In terms of the body, these are really important. Your eyes, it's looking at how you use your kinesphere as well. A kinesphere is a technical dance term. It would, if you imagine a sphere around you, which would be as far as you could reach, that is your kinesphere. The interesting thing is that when we control our body and our voice, we are in what Eric Berne would call our adult ego state. We're not in our parent ego state. We're not in our child ego state. When we have control over our body and our voice, we energize our adult ego state. Now, parent, adult, child is from the world of transactional analysis, and I'm not going to get into transactional analysis on this call, but needless to say, an adult ego state is when a person is in here and now processing. The reason that it is important in terms of impact, it's the space of innovation. It's the space of problem solving. It's the place where you can engage stakeholders and move an agenda forward. So I'm conscious I've talked for about 25 minutes. So Victoria, I'd love to join you again and open the floor up to a discussion with people.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sean, for this lovely presentation. I just wanted to say that I completely agree with your points, and I think that learning and development is very important for every organization, and that every HR manager or professional out there should have like some sort of program sorted out for their employees to improve their performance. Now, let's move on to the questions. We had some questions arriving on Instagram as well, so I will be reading them. So, one person said, learning is luckily a huge part of our organization, but how can I ensure more employees participate in the programs we set up?
Okay, that's a really good question, and I think there are two parts to it. It's making sure that the programs that you offer are rooted in a need that has been expressed. So, one way of driving engagement is to make sure that the solutions that we are offering are what employees need. Secondly, I come back to Berne's cultural model. If people don't see people around them participating, they won't participate. So it's also the focus. Yes, the solution has to be important and well designed, and that goes without saying. But there has to be equal engagement in ensuring that people, not just the target group, but people all around participate. One of the things that I've done in corporate roles as well is I don't forget the expertise that sits within the organization as well. So I often will partner with marketing functions to think about the best way of positioning a learning and development intervention. But I get advocates of the program. The best people to promote programs are people who have participated themselves, and they can actually share their experience. It's not an easy thing to crack. I think it's about using multiple tactics to try and drive engagement.
Yes, but I have another question here on my own. So, what would happen, for example, for people that are working remotely, for let's say when they're not there present in the office? What will happen then? Like, how can they participate and show others that they're participating?
Yeah. I think that's a really good call, especially in the current situation where we have people working in the office, people working in a hybrid manner. I think the people joining remotely has to be considered as part of the design of the learning and development solution. So I think there are really two things. The whether people are working remotely is an issue to consider in designing the solution.
Yes.
But to drive participation, that's where character is really significant. So I'm working with an organization at the moment, which we're doing just that. Some people are attending in person, some people are attending through remote access. So the solution has been designed to address that. But what is more important, the CEO is participating as well. And I was thrilled when the CEO sends out his reflections. This is what I learned. So the solution is one piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
Ensuring we're addressing character is really significant too. And I think a lot of people focus on the solution and don't take into consideration character or experience.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I think that when the CEO is involved, I think that the impression is different, you know. It feels like he's caring for the employees. And luckily, we have a CEO like that. So that's a nice thing. Another question we have is, How can we show HR managers the importance of understanding this culture model?
How can we show people?
Yeah, the HR managers as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's how can we show it's important? I
yeah,
think I mean, I gravitate towards this particular model because I'm a transactional analyst and I like it because it's simple. It's really it's three parts. I think there's something about there is a personal accountability as professionals that we need to take. Culture is really significant in the work that we do. And there's plenty out there about culture. Berne's model is just one of many. So I would advocate to be really curious, to,
yes,
to try and find out. Don't wait for someone to tell you.
yes. And maybe we can even share our ideas with the HR managers and persuade them to go with it.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean, even just, if you don't subscribe to it, just like things like the Harvard Business Review, or even just looking at LinkedIn and just seeing what people are posting about starts to build up. So I think be curious, read about it,
mhm,
engage, have discussions about it. Don't
exactly.
wait to be told.
Yes. Okay, another question. How can we help our employees improve their performance by implementing these L&D programs?
So I think for me, programs are part of the puzzle.
Hmm.
So I think if you have a really well designed program, that's going to get you a really long way. So there's something about the program. Does it meet the needs of people? But I know I'm going to be repeating myself
Yes.
a little bit about that's great to have a solution in place. What are people's reality? So I'll give you a classic example. A
Mhm.
classic example when I do manager training. Doesn't matter which level I use, and this is when I used to work within the corporate world. Doesn't matter whether I'm doing junior management training, middle management training, or what have you. This is the common thing that people say. Is my manager going on this?
Yeah.
So for me, that's why experience is really important. People have to see it around themselves. As human beings, again, this is a bit of a theory of transactional analysis. We have an innate desire to connect with other people. We are relationship seeking beings. The more that we feel we have in common with people around us, the more that we will connect. And learning and development is no exception. If I feel that I have been identified to do, some learning and development, it's not systemic. It's not around the person. So that is like my application. And so whenever I'm um, working with an organization, my first question is how are we going to make this systemic?
Yes, exactly. And another thing here says, which methods do you find most useful for learning and development?
That is good, that's a really good question because I think it can be really varied. It can be really varied.
In the education, yeah.
So I also think it's really important to consider culture when designing learning and development experiences. So I've had the good fortune to work in lots of parts of the world, and a technique that will work in one part of the world
Yeah.
doesn't work in another. I'll give you an example. Role play.
Yeah.
Role play. If I'm working in America, role play works. People take it really seriously and it works. And I'm being generalized now, But I know if I were to go to certain other places, I've actually had someone say, what is the point of a role play? It's pretending.
Yeah.
And so in some of the cultures, I might do a case study rather than a role play. So we still try to get to the same learning, but through different methodologies. And then we all have our preference
Yes.
individually. I mean, personally, I like to read. I like to read books. That's how I like to learn.
Yeah, so I think that the important thing here is to know your employees, to know the culture of the company, and of course, just adjust to it and make sure that you choose the best method there is. Okay, another question says, what's your view on a company having a designated person to handle this subject? So, like one person that will be handling L&D programs.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because I firmly believe, this is my perspective, learning. That's why I don't like the word training. I prefer the word learning. We're all accountable for our own learning. That's my view.
Yeah.
My view is we're all accountable for our learning. It's useful for me having someone organize. It's a bit like a conductor in an orchestra. So I think it's good to have a focal point in terms of organization. Learning and development is also, it's a very big investment in terms of not only, dollars and pounds and euros, but also people's time. So I think the expertise that we, as learning and development professionals, can bring to an organization is making sure, especially when resources are limited, that the learning and development we provide has the most maximum value. And in some organization where resources aren't a challenge, we can start to provide solutions that really go into what people want. In other organizations, it's more limited. It's about addressing what the organization needs. So it really depends on the life cycle of the organization and the resources that it has available to invest.
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, it's the same thing. So we need to focus more on the organization and what works for it. Yeah. So, okay, another thing, are group discussions enough? Like having a group discussion with your team in the company.
I actually think group discussions are a really good way of learning, particularly if you say you've been introduced to a subject. Let's talk about, I'm making something up, conflict resolution. So there can be a formal input around, say, conflict resolution, which could take many forms. But often, if we talk about learning, what is often really useful is when people then go away and have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
about it with colleagues and friends. That's learning. Because what is happening neurologically, you're taking information and you're like almost scenario planning it out. Well, what about this or what about that? So for me, conversation is really critical
Yeah.
to the learning experience. I always say to people I'm teaching, explain this to someone else. If you can have a conversation with someone else about this, you kind of got it.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Another question we got was, will online training be enough for remote workers? You see, again, the remote workers, they want to know if online training is enough.
I'm going to be really honest. I don't know. I I really don't know. It depends on the individual and the subject. So if I take myself, for example, all of my professional coaching training that I've done has all been online because I am using a vendor from the States. It's all been online. And I'm actually okay with this medium for what I want to learn. It depends. I might find it a little bit challenging to learn how to present to an audience live through this medium. I mean, this is great for learning how to present. If we take presentation skills as a learning subject, teaching people how to present online through the medium of using technology would really be congruent. It might be more difficult to really help people think about how they present in front of the group just purely online. I don't want to knock online. I think there's loads of things that you can learn from it, but I don't think it answers everything.
Yeah, from my personal experience, I believe that it depends on the person, whether they feel comfortable with online trainings or not. For example, I can go to an online training and not feel anything like, I mean, I'm okay with it, so I don't feel pressure. I can do it from anywhere in the world. So it's a good option for me. But maybe there are some people that want to be, I don't know, maybe present,
Yeah.
live in the office. So yeah, it depends again on the people.
And there is something about, it's interesting, as you mentioned in your introduction, I'm studying transactional analysis. If I think about last year, for the first half of the year, we all met online because we had to, because we were going through lockdown. And we would spend a weekend talking to a screen. And it seemed to work. But there was something additive about us meeting in person. There's a dynamic when you meet in the real world that's really hard to replicate through this medium.
Yes, we will never be able to get that, personal human touch that you get in person, of course. Yeah, but we can do what we can do. So
yeah, I think
we won't have another pandemic.
And I think what it has done, which is which I love about technology, it's enabled, for example, to have conversations like this, which we would have not been able to do like even 10 years ago.
Yes.
So yes, it doesn't answer everything, but I think its position in a scheme of learning and development solutions is really powerful.
Yes, by doing this, we're also learning and developing ourselves. So
Yeah.
Yes. And another question, how important is the onboarding process in this whole learning and development?
We talk about the onboarding crisis. People, there is a view that people make their decision about whether they've joined the right company in like the first month of their experience. And for me, this is where, if we go back to Berne's model, a potential disconnect between the etiquette, techniques, and character. So if I've been promised something through the etiquette, through my recruitment process, that isn't a reality when I join, that's going to be really critical. The first thing that is important to a person when they join an organization is called rational commitment. And rational commitment is simply, have I joined the right company?
Yes.
Have I joined the right company? And if onboarding isn't a productive experience, that's when we do see it, especially in certain businesses. Recruitment is actually one of those where the turnover of people in the first 3 months is quite significant. And apologies if there are anyone from recruitment businesses, on the call, but that's the nature of the industry. It's got, a high turnover level.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much for your answers. I mean, we're reaching the end of our little discussion. Thank you so much for your presentation, for your responses to all of these questions. I really enjoyed our 1 hour discussion. And thanks to everyone who attended this live event. In the following days, we'll send you the materials, the slides, the video, and the resources. And for more HR events like this one and other videos connected to human resources, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay on top of all current trends. You can also join our HR community, where you can continue discussing this topic with HR professionals from all around the world. And also, please don't hesitate to add me or Sean on LinkedIn for any further questions or doubts you may have on this topic. Thank you so much again, Sean.
Okay, and thank you.